We good? All right, well, we'll get underway as soon as Mr. McDonald's quiet. Sorry, Ian. I was actually trying to deflect from other people that were chatting still, but good afternoon. Welcome to our regular meeting for Wednesday, November 22nd, 2023. Before we begin, I'd like to recognize with gratitude that the CVRD is on the unceded territories of the Kwatsan, Malahat, Subasit, Halalt, Penelakut, Staminas, Layaxan, Paucachin, Dididat, and Pachidat nations, whose people have walked gently here for thousands of years. And with that, we will start our meeting. Before we get to approval of the agenda, Mr. Robbins, are there any changes to the agenda this afternoon?
There are indeed, Mr. Chair, a new item under NB1, New Business 1, request for a letter of support. We just distributed that email. That's the only change on the agenda at this time.
Thank you. With that change, if we can get a motion to adopt the agenda as amended under report of the chairperson. Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Istash. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries to the adoption of the minutes. Mr. Robbins.
There are a couple of errors under the minutes. C2, there's a reference to the rowing club. That C2 should be referenced to the town of Ladysmith. And under the CSCR1, which was a rise report from November 8th closed, as the board did not change the terms of reference, the two directors appointed to the Accessibility Advisory Committee are not necessary. So those are the changes to the minutes of November 8th.
With those errors and omissions corrected, a motion to adopt the minutes as amended. Moved by Director Justice, seconded by Director Staples. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Mr. Robbins.
Moving through to agenda item 4, public input period. The public input period is to offer the public an opportunity to comment on an agenda item before the board considers the item. The public input period procedure policy allows for an allotment of 15 minutes, where the speaker is welcome to comment on any items on the agenda up to a maximum of 3 minutes. This excludes items that may, are, or have been the subject of a public hearing. The speaker should comment in a polite, calm, and courteous manner using respectful language, civility, and decorum. I don't have anybody online looking to participate, so we look to the boardroom if anybody.
For public input on items on the agenda. Then just come to the podium. And I will remind folks that these are on items on the agenda, so please mention the agenda item you're referring to in your comments, if you can, to help the board understand the input that you're giving. And you just press the blue button on the microphone there to turn it on. Yep. There you go.
Okay. Greetings. Thank you, everyone. So I am currently uncertain about which item on the agenda I'm speaking to. So that's one thing. It's regarding housing. So I'll go ahead, and I'm just not sure the actual number. So please forgive me for that.
If you're not sure the number, then what? So let's see if
D2 I'm here.
The only item is we have a delegation speaking to with regards to extreme weather response for the Cowichan Valley.
Okay.
Is that?
It's not entirely relevant to that.
So I'm going to try and give you a little bit of latitude here, but I will warn if it strays too far from an agenda item, then I will say that it's out of order and end the public input.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So pardon my attire. I'm essentially on my lunch break right now. So what this is regarding is my partner and I live in a trailer. And the data is, it would have been October 1st we moved in. Shortly after that, the landowner was given a zoning infraction. I don't know the technical term for it. We are told by the CVRD that we have to leave in the next few months. Apparently that'll be March by the time that comes around. And so what I want to speak to is the implications of this to my life, business, and as that relates to housing, regional housing supply in general. There's a lot of intersections going on here with how that intersects with regional housing stock and the housing crisis. So that's the frame that I'm looking at this through. First and foremost, the property that we're on, we are helping the landowner, who's an elderly woman, age in place. So that's one point. I see the timer isn't working here, so I'm not seeing how much time I have left.
You got 3 minutes from now.
Great, sounds great. Okay, so we are helping our landowner age in place. One example of what that looks like is she's just healing from surgery, so she was lacking mobility in her arms, and so she asked us a week ago or so if we could help her stoke her wood stove, and so I went up and helped her stoke her wood stove so she could have heat. One example. Number two of why I bring this to the floor is I'm a business owner. I run a business as a stonemason, and I'm starting another business currently doing drought mitigation earthworks. It's like rainwater harvesting earthworks, essentially. The housing that I currently have, I have access to a shop and a place where I can store tools, equipment, where I can store excess materials from the job site, right, and things of this nature. If I didn't have this housing option, what that would mean, basically, I've gone through all the options. There aren't a lot of options. So, place to park a tiny home, for instance, in a campground doesn't allow for the storage of these types of things, which for me as a business owner means that I'd have to pay extra for a place in town, thus rendering my business not viable. It wouldn't be profitable. So that's the thing. I have that ability to make this business work currently because I judge this housing option to be one that is affordable. Number three, my partner and I want to start a family, and as any of you who have families might understand, it takes suitable, affordable housing to do such a thing. We currently have suitable and affordable housing, and so that's me. And so, lastly, the way that I believe that this ties into any agenda item regarding housing is my judgment is that it is not only myself who may currently, or may in the soon-to-be future be in the circumstance that myself and my partner are in. We've looked at the options in terms of housing. It's not looking good. That has implications for the landowner. That has implications for me and my business. And third, like I said, that has implications for us and our desires to start a family. What else? That covers all of it. I imagine that there are a lot of other people in this circumstance, but they wouldn't be willing to fight this, and they'd end up in precarious housing situations, hopefully not on the street. That's me. Thank you very much.
Sorry, sir, what was your name again?
Stephen Disher.
Okay. So, Stephen, I'm going to say this is the most latitude I've given anyone ever during public input, and I want to make it known on the record that I won't do that again. But I appreciate your plight, and I appreciate that you came forward and presented your dilemma in a kind and thoughtful way. And I do sympathize with you, and I know all of our other colleagues do. I can't speak really on the item. I think that, to be frank, it's difficult for us to take public input on enforcement items, especially around statutory positions like building inspection or bylaw enforcement, because this body should not interfere with those statutory obligations of those officer positions. I'm sure you could see how that could be abused as an elected official, but what we do talk about is policy frameworks and how we can work with senior levels of government to bring forward enabling legislation to allow things like the experience you have to be solved. But I want to thank you for your input and especially that you brought it forward in a respectful way. And I know I could say you've given a lot of food for thought for our colleagues as well as the public that may be watching this meeting. But I want to make it firm that I won't give that kind of latitude again, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to be heard. So thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And can I mention 5 more seconds here?
You're already over 4 minutes, but
okay.
Sure.
Okay, all right. My recommendations, temporary use permit for myself or people in this circumstance until the new legislation comes through, at which point let's have that piece of legislation determine what happens forward.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Disher.
Thank you very much.
Have a great afternoon. Thank you. Ms. Robbins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're going to move on to delegations. We have two delegations for you this afternoon. We're joined virtually by Jody Dong, BC Ferries, with regards to the ferries' long-term plan engagement. I notice that she's now online, and I'm just going to go to the podium and bring up her PowerPoint.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Ms. Dong. Mr. Robbins is just going to go bring up, I believe, your PowerPoint, but welcome and thank you for coming.
Thanks very much for having me today. This arose out of a presentation, a workshop that we did with coastal regional districts back in September, and we had some of your staff on there, and they suggested that I come and speak to this item at a board meeting.
Just be a moment while we get the presentation shared through our system here. Mr. Robbins is just doing that. Almost there.
I can see it now.
Yes, we can. And if Mr. Robbins can somehow full screen it. If not, we're probably good enough. We just see a lot of extra stuff on the screen. Yeah, it's F11 or something, I think. But that's fine. Good enough. Are you going to be forwarding the slides? Sure. Okay. So, Ms. Dong, when you need the slides forwarded, you could just say, next slide. And Mr. Robbins
Okay.
was going to handle it from the podium. We hope.
Thank you for that. I've been having weird tech issues today, so I just didn't want to share my screen in case something strange happened. Okay, next slide, please.
We're also having weird tech issues, but there we go.
Here we go. So thanks for having me. I'm the Executive Project Director for this project, and I've come to present to you an overview of the project and engagement opportunities. Next slide, please. So we're doing a visioning project at BC Ferries. It is not just for the company, though. It's for the coastal ferry system broadly. So on the right two boxes there, you'll see the 10-year capital plan, performance term plan, which frames the service delivery. Those are things that BC Ferries has done traditionally, routinely. But what we're doing now is a vision project, and it's new, it's different. So it's different because it's both going long-term out to 2050, and it's also looking at the whole ferry system on the coast. And so the Ministry of Transportation did a similar exercise in 2020. They did an engagement and some themes came out of that. However, those were not really actioned on because of the pandemic and all sorts of other changes that came from various issues related to that. And so we're picking that up now and doing a broad engagement and high-level vision, and then out of that also establishing priorities around service levels, policies, and investments out to 2035. And those will be able to provide a guiding framework for the shorter-term decisions and being able to deal better with issues of the ferry system's having. So that's the context of what this is. Next slide, please. So we're taking an approach where, and this is what we were talking about at the regional district workshop, where we're looking at doing some modeling and data and hoping to work with local governments to enrich what's available to us around these future forces and trends. So, population and employment, we know things are changing, and we want to make sure that we have workforce skills, appropriate skills in the right places along the coast. Tourism policies, we know that the ministry is looking at diversifying tourism and strategies to do that away from those places that are really maxed out, and how will that impact the ferry system? How can we accommodate that? Goods movement, it's really not clear what the ferry system's role is in goods movement, and the atmospheric flooding event really highlighted how fragile our system is, especially on the island. Automated vehicles, we know that their electric vehicles are being mandated by 2050 to be only ones sold in the province. So how is that? And they come with weight issues. They're heavier than conventional diesel vehicles, and charging infrastructure that'll be needed. So how can we plan for that? Micromobility as well. So integration is a big part of this initiative as well. So in terms of micromobility, we know that demand is increasing, plus there's targets to do mode share shift away from private vehicles to electric bikes and better integration with transit. So what will that mean for the ferry system? And digitization of services like health services. We can see our doctors online now. So how is that impacting travel patterns? So we're looking at all of these pieces and those public policy goals, what they're driving for change and how that will look in 2050, and then developing strategies and options to get there. Next slide, please. So we have a series of goals that we're consulting on. This is phase 1 of our engagement. So reliable, safe, and affordable are all mandated in the legislation that governs the system, but they're really not defined. There's not key performance measures or clear policies related to all of them. And so we're looking to the public and interest holders to hear from them about what their priorities are and what they want those to look like, what they mean to them. As I mentioned, integration is a new one that's becoming very important to the province particularly, and local governments with increases in active transportation infrastructure. So how can we both have better infrastructure to integrate the ferry system with the surrounding communities, but how can we also work better and plan better for long-term planning to support local communities so that they're not being done in isolation of each other? And then affordable, what does that actually mean? It's really not defined. And so we're looking at pricing, different pricing mechanisms. How can we do that? And user focus, so an emphasis on accessibility for all users and diverse users, and comfortable and convenient customer experience. So we've got an engagement platform out, and we're asking for feedback on these as well as other considerations for future ferry service, sort of an open-ended piece to put your thoughts in. Next slide, please. So we're putting all this together into, we're doing the modeling to do the future scenarios. We're looking at the goals, challenges, and strategies, and then prioritizing those over the spring once we hear back from this engagement. And then we'll be looking at funding models, and really, as part of this engagement, hoping to build new partnerships to work together better with communities, so that we're set up for success when this exercise is done. Next slide, please. So if you haven't seen it already, this is what the project site looks like. It's at bcferriesprojects.ca. We encourage everyone to take part and encourage your communities to take part. It's open until November 28th. It takes about 15 minutes to complete. We've got some FAQs on there with some more background and a promotional toolkit to share around, social media pieces on there, and we'll be updating this as we go along the project. This is just the first initial go at the project site. I think that's my last, I think maybe I have one more slide, or that's my last slide. Right. So timeline, so it closes, as I said, November 28th is phase 1, which is really on the goals of the ferry system. And then we're going to be publishing what we heard report in January, and then working on those priorities and strategies over the spring. And then we'll be coming out again with a draft vision in the spring, and then completing it by the end of June. So thank you for your time, and please feel free to contact me if you have any questions or follow up.
Thank you. Are you okay to take a few questions now? I see we've got a number of directors that are on the speakers list.
Yes, absolutely. I will say I am new to BC Ferries, and I'm actually seconded from the ministry, and I am working on this project. I can take away, if there's operational kind of current issues questions, I can take those away, but I won't be able to.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that. Mr. Robbins, are you able to lower the presentation just so I can see the directors on my screen? I have Director Wilson and Martman, I believe, on my speakers list to start, but thank you for the presentation. I'll start with Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Jody. I don't envy you the job you've taken on here at all, considering some of the obstacles you have to overcome. There's a couple of things that I'd like to ask about. The first one is a bit difficult. Work from home? What's how is that going to work?
Probably for administration, but please go ahead.
So when I say work from home, so I mean
No, it was a bit mischievous. I'm sorry. Yeah, don't worry about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the other one is there obviously is a shortage of skilled labour. We know that throughout the merchant marine workforce around the world. And what I'd like to ask about is there any difference between the Canadian training standards or and the SOLAS, S-O-L-O-S standards, or if, for instance, you got somebody who was foreign trained but has the SOLAS certifications, would they be accepted without having to forego with further training?
I don't work in that area. I don't specifically know the difference between the standards, but I do know that the People and Culture Division are working to advocate to have those relaxed. I believe those are set by the federal government, but they are doing what they can. I know they've just brought a load of Ukrainian folks in to work on ferries, and working with the senior levels of government to see what they can do to have a smoother flow of different kinds of standards and be able to have them work on the ferry system.
Good. And on top of that, do you have a problem with shore staff employment, or are they there's not the same as having the sea staff employment problems?
I don't know specifically, but I know overall, yeah, it's just a shortage. Absolutely, okay. Overall, yeah.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Martman.
Thank you for the presentation and coming to our board. I just wondered where marine environment stewardship would fit into this project.
Yes, that would be, so in the goals and objectives we have, it's kind of, we're calling it climate sensitive. We're not really sure what to call that bucket right now, but marine stewardship, environmental sensitivity we do have a category for that.
Is that it, Director Martman? Okay. Director Eustache.
Thank you, Chair. Of course, I'll be jumping into the survey this evening to fill it out, and without knowing the context of what's in it right now, my question is, will it have questions and areas for comments with regards to BC transit connectivity? The reason I asked, for example, was the short-sightedness of changing the Departure Bay Transit over to Duke Point, whereas Duke Point has no BC Transit connectivity for people that choose to do active transportation, so they couldn't get to that ferry when the intention was to load level, which means they're still stuck going to Departure Bay Ferry. So just hoping that the survey takes into context of how we can actually get to the ferry service.
Yes, absolutely. That's part of the integration component, and so you'll be asked during the survey for your feedback on how to how important is this and how to integrate the ferry services better with transit and active transportation. Absolutely.
Great, thank you. Director McClinton.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, probably won't be able to answer this question, but I'm going to try it anyways. As somebody who grew up on Thetis Island, took a ferry every day, got PTSD thinking about wait times. I rode the Calypso every day. That's now the Mill Bay ferry. Just curious, is there any insights you can provide around tackling extended wait times, especially around holiday times and seasonal peak times? Is that going to be addressed in a meaningful way?
I can say that. This initiative is for the long-term plan. We are looking at service levels and prioritizing around service levels, and that will definitely guide the shorter-term decisions. I'm sorry, I don't know specifically about Thetis Island.
Follow up, if I may, just quickly. I was just trying to give me some context. That was probably really irrelevant. I'm more just thinking about, Nanaimo, Victoria, those big wait times, families trying to connect, and waiting in a ferry lineup for 10 hours, kind of thing. Those are the extremes. I know that's not the normal, but is there planning to address those? What I can imagine are only going to increase as the island's population increases.
Yes, and reliability is definitely something that we're looking at with this process. And yes, I know there's many people working on how to deal with this reliability issue short term as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions from the directors or comments before we thank our delegation? I think that's it. Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Dong. I really appreciate you coming and bringing that to us, and especially for sharing the engagement process. The more you get the word out, the more I'm sure you'll hear from the members of the public, especially from island and coastal communities. So thank you for taking on this work and being absconded from the ministry. You definitely take on a tall task, so congratulations.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Okay, you too.
All right, thank you. Mr. Robbins.
Moving to our second delegation who are joining us here in person. We have Diane Hinton and Judy Stafford from the Cowichan Coalition to End Homelessness. And I'm going to do the same thing and get their presentation going.
He's just going to get your presentation up and... In the meantime, welcome Ms. Stafford, Ms. Hinton. Thank you for all the good work you do in this conversation and so many others in the Valley. It's not on WebEx though yet, Mr. Robbins. No. Halfway there. This is where I need that other music to play. Final Jeopardy. There we go. It looks good on our side. Thank you, Mr. Robbins, and again, welcome.
Thank you. And I do thank you very much. My name's Diane Hinton, and I am newly the coordinator for the Cowichan Coalition to address homelessness and affordable housing. So I'm a month on the job, so go easy. I'm grateful for this opportunity to share this information regarding the operations of extreme weather response shelters for the region, and that's why I'm grateful to be here, because it is a regional thing that we're aiming toward here. And I'm hoping that should you have opportunity to consider a site or sites, that you'll have this information in advance of that. I also want to thank the team at Lookout Housing Society. They put together this presentation, but they've asked me to deliver it on behalf of the team. So just a little bit of background, the fact that it is a community-based and led program. There are dozens of community teams working together on putting together a strategy to deliver the service should the need arise. We are extremely united, I would say, as a community of service providers. We have the capacity. We know that we have the capacity, and all we're missing is a location and or locations, plural. Again, the service would be operated by Lookout Housing and Health Society. The funding comes from BC Housing. Ideally, the location is donated for the time period. The shelters are only operated during winter months, so November typically till March, and not every day. The shelter is only open when an alert is issued by the community, and as that united team of community providers, we sort of determine, we agree upon a threshold at which the shelters would open. And, that last bullet just stresses the need for this service. This is from the point in time count. Hopefully this is a repeat for all of you, that this was done earlier in the year. The number of people who are homeless, their situation, how much of an increase that has been, and how many people have been experiencing this since the age of 19 or before. Last year, so November till March is sort of the time period that BC Housing allows. Last year, the shelter was open for 24 nights. So it isn't an everyday thing, and I think that's important for those landowners to consider. This is not every day. Last year, 425 people were sheltered, and on average, 18 people a night. And if you go back to that previous slide, there are over 200 people, but only 18 were sheltered a night, that every night the shelter was open, because there was only one location. This is a lot of detail about how that process happens, and I'm happy to go into it, but I think you also have it. So it just talks about, that threshold, then the process, the lead agency calls it. So Lookout Society would call, today the shelter will be open, and then the process by which the communications happen in and amongst the service providers, and how we get that message out to the folks who may require the shelter for the evening. So that's just a lot of detail. I know you guys have a tight agenda today, so I won't go over it, but if any questions afterwards, please just... This is typical operations, so some may have heard 8 to 8. It was bumped to 7 to 7 last year because there were concerns with schools close by. So Lookout Society actually bumped the opening and closing times to accommodate, just to support that there wasn't two things happening at the same time, children arriving for school and the shelter guests leaving for the day. So just to say that when concerns are noted, the team is ready to sort of adapt and adjust and make whatever changes or make the most sense for the most amount of people. There were 3 staff, so if there's one location, 3 staff. And then, of course, again, that community of service providers is able to provide daytime outreach to all those folks. There are perimeter checks. Everybody leaves with a breakfast, and if the location is not within walking distance, BC Housing has stepped up and said that they would provide funding for transportation, and lots of conversation about that. Again, a lot of this comes from last year's experience. There was feedback from the neighbors, and so just lots of conversation about what can we do to address some of those concerns. And these are some of the responses to that. So, Place to Be, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. So we have daytime warming stations. So we can, right now, they're being used as daytime warming stations. If there should be an extreme weather shelter located in this region, or shelters, plural, and it isn't within walking distance, that Place to Be can also be a muster point. So one of the concerns last year was that folks loitered. So instead, we could use this Place to Be as a muster point. People meet there and are transported to the shelter and back, and that could address that concern about loitering. The Place to Be also supports a lot of outreach, so there's information out there. We can get the message, the shelter is open tonight, this is how you access the shelter, and support those folks to access it. So that's seen as one of the ways to address concerns from last year. The staffing schedule has been adjusted, so again, that hour on either end. And then our support of bylaw. Should there be any untoward behavior occurring, we can support folks to correct their behavior. So these are some of the commitments in the partnerships. So BC Housing, it's not typical for them to do this transportation funding, but they've agreed to do that. Island Health is an incredible partner. And then, of course, the emergency management team. If it's found to be outside of a walkable distance and transportation cannot be confirmed, the shelter will not occur. So these are some of the commitments that Lookout and the team are making to address some of the concerns that were experienced last year. There's a good neighbor agreement, so all shelter guests are asked to sign a good neighbor agreement. And again, that addresses some of that bylaw concern and then any other friendly neighbor concerns that folks might have. And the staff are there to support people to stay true to that agreement. This is more information about how we get the word out there. So there's postings on site, should neighbors have concerns, who to contact. Once the weather alert is triggered, the communication is huge. There's a lot of folks who are informed in the community. So police are informed, Island Health is informed, and all the community agents. So there's a really good communication system in place for those days that it's triggered. And that's the end. Any questions?
Thank you so much. I'll turn to the board. I can't see everyone on my screen right now, so just give me a second here. Any questions from the board members in the room? Director Staples.
Thanks for the presentation. I just have a question specifically around, so you said that Lookout calls the nights that the shelter is open. What is that based on? The information that they why do they call it? Like what criteria are they referring to? Or are they just deciding tonight we're going to do it? I ask because that has come up quite a lot in You have to, yeah.
So as a team, this United Community team, we have arrived at an agreed upon threshold. So I don't know if this is the same as last year. I'm 1 month into the job, but for us, we've decided on 2 degrees Celsius or successive days of rain, which creates a situation that makes it impossible for people to get or stay dry. That's this year's. It could be different in every community, and it could be different every year.
Thank you. Now looking to directors joining remotely or others in the room. Director Segal.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation. And I'm just wondering, I think we've had below 2 degrees so far this year. So what's happened so far?
What a great question. So, as I said, we are an incredibly united team of agencies ready to do this service. We have the Lookout Society has the staff in place, they're trained, they have the equipment. Cowichan Green Community has meals at the ready. We have not been able to find a location, or locations, plural. Again, it's a regional service that we're trying to provide, and there are 200 plus folks, so one 30-bed facility would be amazing, and more would be even better.
Hello.
So this is required by the province, right? And so if it's not available, what's the backup? Or I guess that's what I'm asking. If we haven't had a location, we're not living up to that obligation? Okay.
Thank you. Director Istash and then Martman.
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarity for myself to jog my memory, in the 223, Village and Paddle are properties are considered, they're residents, so they aren't included in the 223, correct? Of homeless at the point in time count?
I'm not sure. So the point in time count would be people who were unhoused at that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So if they were housed, they would not be counted.
Yeah, and then, Warmland is a shelter, and how many beds is that currently?
I don't know the answer to that. 30 emergency
So
shelters.
that's our total capacity in the valley right now, then?
And there's a line
Oh,
up for that.
just-
Yeah,
That would be great. I just.
Director.
for the
Yeah, and I was
benefit
going to
of
say,
all the
that's not
directors,
the
it's my
valley
line,
either,
so-
because there are beds in
was-
Ladysmith and other
Well,
locations.
in
Yes,
the-
Sea Wave, I think, has. Sea Wave has.
Ladysmith has 12.
Right, so these are, but those are shelter beds. So there's different types. This is extreme weather shelter beds that are only open, yeah, okay.
And we're by no way trying to insinuate there's enough. We're trying to highlight that there aren't enough. Yeah, so for those of us who, all of the people that are speaking right now are trying to highlight that there aren't adequate shelter beds available.
Thank you, and there's an inadequate presentation.
No, not at all.
My bad.
I think I had Director Martman next.
Thank you. When I spent one night at the extreme weather shelter, I think it was last winter, one thing that struck me was the need for belongings to be secured and for pets. How do you see that being woven into this muster point if they have to be transported or transportation needs to be included?
Yeah, I guess, I wish we weren't so desperate. So I wish that a location could be found that was walkable and accessible, so folks could bring their carts and have it with them. But the situation we're in is that we're just not able, at this point, we're not able to do that. And so the muster point was seen as a way to do that. We've had conversations about, a coat check system, so we could have someone watch over people's belongings, and then, you bring your coat check tag and you get your pets. It's a whole other, it's unfortunate, but honestly, we're here basically desperate. So whatever we can get is what we can get, and ideally that wouldn't have to be the case, that people could bring their belongings with them.
Yeah, just the observation is that people will not take place or, will not take use of the emergency shelter if they have to leave their pets behind and their belongings behind. So yeah, it's a real problem.
I think belongings are a little bit easier than pets. But yeah, if we could find something that was accessible and within walking distance, that would be addressed.
Thank you. Director McClinton online. Director McClinton.
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment to keep it brief. Just hearing this, just my heart breaks, and I know there's no magic bullet to fix this problem. It faces many communities throughout North America. For me, this is just a continuum of our housing crisis, and these are the things that we can make a difference in people's lives. We got the tools to do it. Just encourage people to keep these issues top of mind. That's it.
Thanks, Director McClinton.
Oops.
Director McGonigal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Through you, if I may. Thank you for the presentation. In your presentation, you mentioned from the Malahat to Oyster. There was no mention of the West, for instance, as a regional entity. And we certainly have some concerns in the West End of those who are marginally housed and could utilize access to an extreme weather shelter itself. But the transportation issue with being so far away would be problematic. Do you see an avenue to rectify that should the need occur in the West?
I mean, as I've said, we're sort of at this position where we're desperate. I'm 1 month into the job to creating this coalition or bringing back this coalition, but I was in Chemainus on Monday, so Chemainus has need, Lake Cowichan has need, Ladysmith has need. So we don't even have one? Absolutely. This is a regional thing we should be doing, and so each one of those communities should have options for their residents.
Great idea. But what I was looking at was more of a transportation issue. Should there be one that is central? Given the lack of support services within the West End for those with mental health and addiction issues, most of the services that would be afforded for that opportunity reside within the core. So the transportation to get to those services is problematic for a number of people. So just trying to make that comment that the need is throughout the region. Each community could have a shelter hub and still not be sufficient for the region.
Thank you. I think I have Director Wilson next.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I think Director McClinton brought up the phrase that it breaks my heart, and it does. You know, it's a key phrase in here. One of the things that Director McGonigal has brought up was the and people come first. I agree with that, but in a lot of cases, the question of their belongings and their pets is quite a significant one, because in a lot of cases this is all they have, and the pets certainly are more of an emotional support than anything. So if going forward there is anything we can do to help that, put people first of course, but I think we would need to look at the kind of things that accompany these folks as well. Is that something that might be looked at, but without sacrificing what we're giving as at the moment?
I mean, we're giving nothing, so yes, I would look at anything. Yeah, it's you know, I think of Maslow. I'm a dog lover. I want to take care of the dogs, but we have zero support for the folks in an emergency, in an extreme weather situation. So yes, and you know, starting somewhere would be good.
Thank you. Follow up, Director Wilson? Nope. Okay. I'm seeing no more hands. Oh, Director McClinton?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just curious, like, for you, the Chair, is there anything on your short list and ask, is there locations that have been identified? Is there some funding? Like, can you maybe just share, give us some context, what you need? Like, do you have that? Can you elaborate on that?
He's asking me. Yeah, so we need a location. We need locations, plural. We are at the ready. We have Lookout Housing and Health Society has trained employees ready to do the work. They have the equipment. Cowichan Green Community has meals at the ready. We need a location or locations. And I guess my ask is, should you be in a position to offer a location or locations, that you have this information to inform your decision about those locations?
One quick follow-up, if I may.
Director McClinton, go ahead.
Thank you. Can you provide an example of what a suitable location that could be quickly transformed? Are we talking about a gymnasium? Can you just any sort of examples just to give me a concrete idea?
Sure. So last year, a church hall. So again, it was amazing to have that. It was not walkable, so that created some issues. So I think walkable, and that could be so many different things, especially when we start talking about different communities. So something that was walkable would be amazing. Accessible, so not a lot of stairs, especially if we've got people who are bringing their worldly belongings. Washrooms for folks, and you know, a big open space. We're talking about mats on a floor. This is extreme weather response. This is not long term, and so yeah, I don't. Anything would be amazing.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Have I missed anyone? I don't see any more speakers on my list. Seeing none, I want to thank you all again. Thank you, and your presentation was more than adequate. It was excellent. So, you know, I know this is new to you, but this conversation and the work that the group you're working with supports is not a new conversation for any of us in the Valley. I hope that you understand that most of what you heard around this table today was supportive of your need and the vision that you have, and that we recognize how difficult it is in somewhat divisive times to put people first when speak carefully. When many people are more focused on their own needs than the needs of others, and maybe if we could all look to lift each other up a little bit more, all of our lives and quality of lives would be better. So that's the vision that I support, and I know that's the work you're trying to do. So I just want to thank you for continuing that work. Stay strong, be determined, and your presentation was fantastic, so thank you very much. Do we want to keep going through appointments and report of the chair, or do we need a short break? I'm seeing short break, sorry, short break one early, my informal vote. We'll come back at 2:35. That'll give me a chance to talk to one of our colleagues before we do appointments. Thank you. All for today. Are we good to go? No? I was waiting for Karen to get out of her seat. The meeting doesn't start until Karen gets up. And we're back. After our body break. Everybody get a good stretch in? Mr. Robbins, I believe that takes us to the report of the chairperson. We did our delegations. Check. Number 6, report of the chairperson.
And that would be you, sir.
Oh, thank you. Good afternoon, and I do have, obviously, the item this afternoon of importance is the standing committee and other appointments. But I also just want to speak briefly to the year ahead. I want to thank you for the support to remain as chair for the coming year, and I want to congratulate again my vice chair, Director Segal. And I want to just reflect on what's been a really pleasant opportunity for us to work together through, as we all know, the bumps, bruises, ups and downs, and sometimes unanticipated challenges that come up in the day-to-day of doing this work. You know, we were able to manage to at least connect on a number of occasions. We sent our joint letters out and communications out to the board. I want to thank all the board members who engaged in that and provided us feedback. As we all know, there's a number of appointments, and people have different desires, skill sets that they want to bring to those different appointments. We can't always deliver on those requests, but I feel like we went through a good process and balanced the feedback we received from all of you, or most of the board members, with what we felt were our obligations as chair and vice chair to deliver on the goals that we've set out for the year ahead. I think it's important to reflect on what those are to the members of the community that we all serve, and it's about bringing together, furthering the spirit of cooperation and collaboration that we feel we've started to build in the first year, both throughout the staff leadership in our organization and around our board table, and also to reflect on that desire to build for succession of the organization and around our board table. I've discussed pretty openly that I feel like this is the sunset of my political career, and I want to help the next generation of people that will hopefully remain at this table to build the skill sets and the competencies that are really required to provide good governance to the region and help shepherd us through what's a difficult time, not just politically, but environmentally, fiscally, and just in the civil discourse that we all experience. And I think we can do that by really cooperating together and helping to build up that skill set and the capacity of all the people that sit around this table, so that we can better communicate and serve the residents that and business people and all of the people that we serve, and hopefully as well for future generations. In that vein, we made the appointments today. I want to reflect particularly on the work that's coming for the governance committee, because I think it will be tasked with helping reshape the work that we do around this table to better serve the needs of our communities. And like I said, not just for today, but for the future as well. But also respecting some of the limitations that we have through its jurisdiction, legislation. There are things that we can and other things that we just cannot do. But we want to provide a level of flexibility, cooperation, and collaboration allow us to be most effective at the jobs we all do. So the governance committee is going to be tasked for taking a look at the policies and procedures that govern how we operate around this table, how we engage with each other and the community, how we do the service that we come to do at this table, and hopefully elevate the roles of vice chairs and other leaders within this organization to not only share the load, but be able to bring their unique perspectives and skill sets to those conversations. We want everybody around this table who has a desire to be able to chair a meeting effectively, but also to bring out the voices of the people that all sit around this table so that we can make the best decisions possible, to help support our staff in the work that they do to bring us good information and provide us that kind of leadership and backup for the difficult decisions that we have to make around this table. So the governance committee is going to be tasked with a heady workload over the next year, and I think that'll help reflect well on our organization moving forward as we hopefully elevate those vice chairs and everyone around this table to get their voices heard and provide the training necessary to really round out our skill sets. So we'll go through the appointments. I'll go through them rather quickly. We will share them by email after. And recognizing that I also want to continue to work with everyone around this table to help make sure if you didn't get the appointment you wanted or got an appointment you might not want, that there's also some good thought that went into it. I hope we can continue to have conversations and help build understanding between each other, and also be flexible as we move forward into the future around who might be up next for those important responsibilities of committee chairs or vice chairs or other external appointments. So I'll go through them in the list that I have here. I know that we've added a number that I realize weren't added to the spreadsheet, like the Couch and Housing Liaison, that's been added. The Vancouver Island Coastal Community Climate Leadership Group, that's been added, as well as the reflection on the update of the AVICC Solid Waste and Circular Economy Committee. The appointee for that will be attending their first meeting this Friday at 1 o'clock, and the alternate will be there to support you because they have been involved as our current appointee in getting that work underway. And that's all good news for our region, because shipping our waste to the United States, I don't think is a responsible way to deal with our waste. And as we move to 3-stream, hopefully we can continue to get towards zero waste. But in the meantime, let's find a way to deal with our waste responsibly. With that, I will go through the appointments. Please, no boos, hisses, or sighs. No applause. Well, applause is fine. But if you do want to talk about the appointments after, I'm willing to continue to have those conversations. But these are the appointments that Director Segal and I have collaborated with the group, and the decisions that we made trying to model that level of cooperation and collaboration that we hope to engender throughout our entire group here. Committee of the Whole, of course, is all of us that participate in Committee of the Whole, as the name states. Chair will be Tim McGonigal, Director McGonigal, and Vice Chair will be Director Wilson. Electoral Area Services Chair will be Director Morrison, with Director Martman as Vice Chair. Governance Committee Chair will be Director Vice Chair Segal, and the Vice Chair of the committee will be Director Abbott. Solid Waste, AVICC Solid Waste and Circular Economy Committee will be Director Deck, with Director Morrison as the alternate. Cowichan Lake Community Forest Cooperative will be Director Morrison. A Cowichan Watershed Board will be Director Nicholson, Director Staples, and myself as co-chair with Chief Whitson. Island Coastal Economic Trust will be Director Acton. Island Corridor Foundation member representative will be Director Morrison. Island Health representative will be Director Segal. Municipal Finance Authority will be Director Wilson, with Director McClinton as alternate. Municipal Insurance Association will be Director Abbott, with Director Martman as alternate. Our Cowichan Community Health Network, 3 representatives would be Director Deck, Director Martman, and Director Wilson. Parcel Tax Review Committee, or Review Panel, will be Directors Abbott, McClinton, and Wilson. TAC representatives, Treaty Advisory Committee representatives, Hulkaminam Treaty Group is Director McGonigal, Dididat Treaty Group is Director Morrison, and Tamuk Treaty Group is Director Segal. Vancouver Island Regional Library Board will be Director Segal, with Director Nicholson as alternate. BC Social Procurement Initiative Steering Committee will be Director Abbott. VICC Climate Group will be Director Nicholson, and Cowichan Housing Association Liaison will be Director McGonigal. I don't believe I've missed any appointments. Mr. Robbins, please don't tell me I did.
Okay, I won't tell you that.
Great, thank you. If I have, we can appoint them at the next meeting, but I think I
Thank you,
did
yes.
update the list, because the list that
Yes.
was provided to me was unfortunately missing a couple of those appointments. So I have updated that list, I presented it, it's been saved, it will be emailed to Legislative Services and the board after the meeting. But I do again want to thank everybody for your input. I think there are more changes to come throughout the year, especially as we work through the governance committee and continue to have really substantive conversations around how we manage our watersheds in the region. And I want to give a special shout out to the leadership from North Cowichan, both in the conversations around Cowichan, Director Nicholson in the conversations that we continue to have around Coxsila, and North Cowichan on Chemainus River watershed management. It's become a real strong theme. Obviously, we're dealing with drought, and we're realizing the impacts of our land use and the impacts it has on our rivers and the impacts that that has on the entire ecosystems of our valley. So water is becoming the most important issue that we face, and I think that we're well served with the group that we have around this table to continue pushing our leadership upstream, if you will, to senior levels of government around how we manage and steward the lands and waters that we're also welcome into through the nations that have been shepherding this place since time immemorial. So that concludes my report, but I do want to cede a moment of my time to Director Abbott, who just has a thank you and an announcement that he wants to make. Go ahead, Director Abbott.
Thank you, Chair. This was delivered to me, hand-delivered this morning by my colleague, Director Toporowski, and it's from the Missing and Murdered Walk for Women, Men, and Children, Cowichan. They wished to acknowledge the CVRD and areas A, B, and C, and D for the support. We would like to extend a warm thank you for your presence here today. We appreciate your participation in the 2023 Gala, Cowichan Missing and Murdered Women, Men, and Children Society. Thank you, Deborah, for attending and delivering this acknowledgement.
Thank you, Director Abbott. That concludes my part of the agenda. So back to you, Mr. Robbins.
We're going to move right to Agenda 9, Committee Reports. CR1 is the report and recommendations of the Committee of the Whole of November 8, 2023. There are 5 recommendations. Director Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to, these have been published. I think some of the numbering is fun again. So I think I'd like to move R2 excluding B, 7, 8, and 9. And B, I think there might be a director wanting to excuse himself from the vote. So
you.
let's do
So we'll do
R2,
the other ones first.
7, 8, and 9, and then I'll move the other one afterwards.
Okay, thank you. So those have been moved. Do I have a seconder for that grouping? Director Staples, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. I think Director Douglas would like to declare a conflict if she would like. Yeah, well, declare your conflict, though.
Oh, yeah, the conflict is I have a child who's going to be in that
Program.
competition.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Which one?
Yeah. It's R2B.
This one, R2? R2 right there, okay, there.
Okay, I'll move R2B.
Seconded by Director Toporowski. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. And thank you, Mr. Elzinga, for inviting Director Douglas back.
That concludes that report.
Thank you. Mr. Robbins.
Moves us to CR2, which is the report and recommendations of the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of November 15th, 2023. In the absence of Director Nicholson, who would you like to call upon?
The new EASC Chair, Director Morrison, can you just
Sure.
present those items?
I'll take it. Report and recommend from the meeting on the 15th. We have some grants and aids. We'll go, unless anybody wants any of the items pulled for all directors, I would move C 1 through 5, R6, 1 and 2, and R7.
So seconded by Director Abbott. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries.
For electoral area directors only, R1, 1 and 2, R2, R3, R4, and R5. I will move those items. They've been previously published.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Martman. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, electoral area directors, and any opposed? None opposed, motion carries.
Okay, that
Thank you. Mr. Robbins.
Well, you actually have another report. CR3 is the report from the Committee of the Whole meeting of November 22nd, 2023.
I
That's
advertised this on the
this
social
morning.
media as the Director Morrison show. Please continue with your third act.
For my third act, from this morning, are we reading them since we just did it this morning, or? Okay, so I'll move. Yes, no, R2, that the 2023 budget for Function 205 Emergency Program be amended to 1, decrease minor capital by $27,417, and 2, increase vehicles and machinery by $27,417. Item 2, that the 2023 budget for Function 100 General Government be amended by 1, decreasing Function 100 Provincial Conditional by $150,000, and 2, increasing Function 100 transfer from operating reserve by $150,000. 3, that an application be submitted to the Trans-Canada Trail Funding Program Trail Infrastructure Major Repair Stream for a funding contribution of $120,000 towards the McGee Creek Trestle Replacement Project as part of the Couch Valley Trail, and I move those items.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Segal. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Mr. Robbins. Thank you, Director Morrison.
Is there a theme song to his show?
But apparently I didn't have it queued up, so for next week.
You have item 10, Director Reports. There is one report from the directors, Deck, Martman, and Segal with regards to an executive summary of Our Couch and Our Health Network. This is for the board's information.
Thank you. Did any of the directors wish to speak to it at all? Director Martman.
Sure, I'd like to invite Director Segal and Deck to have a comment.
Wow, that's a cruel way to start our collaborative year. Director Segal.
Yeah, working with our Cowichan Community Health Network over the last year has been really informative and a moving experience, I would say. It's an incredible collection of community members, stakeholders, and local government. And I was talking to Cindy Lise just when she was here earlier that she started in this room, but it's grown so much they definitely can't fit here. Yeah, and they just do such a great job of bringing community partners together to care for the most vulnerable in our society, which is really important. Karen, do you have anything to add?
Director Deck.
Maud Barlow says that we have an obligation to hope, and a moral obligation to hope. And so what I see in our health, our Cowichan, is a group of people, 70 now, who represent groups all over the community, all over the valley. And when I go, I just feel absolutely inspired that people can just get together, agree, share the things that they've done, and you just know that there's so many people working on behalf of people who need so much. And so it's been a real privilege, and I'm really grateful that I get a chance to go back again this year. Thank you.
Thank you. And Director Bartman.
So to echo my fellow directors, I think the one thing that the community health networks, our Cowichan one is actually part of a greater community of health networks. And my eyes were really open when they invited us to a session at VIU to work on collaborative action. And that is their mantra, I think, to how they want to build activities and things to support people in the community. So again, it's humbling, it's an honor. I think I go there and I listen, and every time I go, I learn something. So it's very valuable. I encourage you to be part of this, but I appreciate being appointed again. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank you all three for doing the great work this year, and to the two of you that will be continuing, and Director Wilson. Hopefully that's something that we can continue to reflect from this table into that work and then bring back to the table. And I want to thank you for the excellent report. That was well done. Thank you. In terms of setting the bar for other appointees, there you go. Thank you. Any discussion or questions of the directors before we move on? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Robbins.
We're going to move to staff reports. SR1 is a report from the Inspection and Enforcement Division with regards to Amendment Bylaw Number 3209, CVRD Ticket Information Authorization Bylaw 2008. This item was referred from the board meeting of November 8th. Mr. McDonald's here to speak to it.
Mr.
Or to answer your
McDonald.
questions.
Good afternoon. Before you is a report, and later on in the agenda is the building bylaw. So we, in order to point all of the tickets to the right direction, we had to amend our MTI bylaw. So this is just a simple report. There was some amendments made to ticket amounts. So there was some research done throughout other districts to see that we were more in line, and we upped some of the fees for some of the tickets. But other than that, it's a fairly straightforward report, and I'm just here if there's any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Robbins, just to be clear here, we have the recommendations of third reading and adoption under the staff report, but also under bylaws. Did you prefer to do that here or at bylaws?
At your pleasure.
You will have to adopt the building bylaw prior to adopting this.
Right.
Okay,
Correct.
so
Yep.
we'll just
Nope.
leave that here for
Thank you.
information.
Thought you might.
Thank you.
Okay.
And we'll clean up that recommendation to be for information as an amendment to the agenda. So that takes us to SR2, unless there are questions for Mr. McDonald on the information item. Seeing none, Mr. Robbins, SR2.
Is a report from Facilities and Transit Division with regards to the CVRD, BC Transit Electronic Transit Fares, the UMO, or UMO, Mr. Wakeman can correct me, I suppose, vendor sales agreement. And there is a recommendation that the CVRD enter an agreement with BC Transit.
And, sorry, I couldn't find Mr. Wakeham on the thing, but I see him under Community Services. Mr. Wakeham, did you have anything you wanted to say to the group before we go to the consideration?
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, directors. Quick update here is March the 8th, Committee of the Whole, we presented the information and the costs that were related to BC Transit's new fare collection system, which is UMO. And since the UMO fare products are administered by BC Transit, and we had a successful launch of the new electronic products just last week on Thursday in Cowichan, we do need a requirement, it's a requirement to have the agreement signed as soon as possible. We do expect the customers are going to transition to this UMO payment method as riders grow awareness surrounds the new method of payment, and they move away from the hard copies, which will be monthly passes, the hard printouts, and the tickets, which will eventually expire. So the new system, we think, is definitely going to make it easier for riders to access their transit fares, and it should help increase revenues as well as ridership. I think the staff report is fairly straightforward.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Wakeham's here for questions, or we'll be looking for the motion, the recommendation. Mr. Robbins, can you just read out that recommendation?
The vendor sales agreement with BC Transit, as described in the staff report to the November 22nd, 2023 regular board meeting, be approved.
Moved by Director McGonigal, seconded by Director Douglas. Any discussion? Director Morrison.
Yeah, through you to Mr. Wakeham. So in reading this, I found it quite interesting that we've got a willing partner in BC Transit to administer this. But I was thinking about the part that stays with us, and that's the cash bits. And I happen to be a fan of cash, but I know that cash is also a little more labor intensive and requires systems and the like. So I guess, am I understanding this correctly, that we're sort of left with the more expensive of the revenue collection side, as far as this organization having to handle the more labor intensive cash side, and the digital side is what's essentially being handled for us by BC Transit and UMO, of course?
Mr. Wakeham.
Mr. Chair, through to Director Morrison, yes, you're correct. There will be two systems. Cash is still here, definitely being a form of collection of a fare product. For some time, the hard tickets as well as the monthly passes, somewhere in the 3 to 4 to 5 month range, they will continue to be taken. And at some point, BC Transit is going to terminate and expire those products, not only in Cowichan, but all the other regions. But yes, you're right. We will continue to deal with the costs associated with the cash handling and the armored guard. But don't make light of the UMO system is expensive as well. There is a fair amount of work and lots of reporting behind the scenes.
Thank you. Any further discussion? It's been moved and seconded. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Wakeham, and thank you to our partners at BC Transit as well. Mr. Robbins.
SR3 is a verbal report from our General Manager of Corporate Services with regards to a letter of support for the Cowichan Housing Association's application to the Rental Protection Fund.
Ms. Mohan, welcome.
Hello, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I'm here to talk to you today about the Rental Protection Fund. So apologies for not having any written information for you to review, but this originated as a request from the Cowichan Housing Association to actually be a co-applicant for this fund. And upon further research, it appears that a letter of support is really what is required from the CVRD. So I'm going to just read a few facts on the Rental Protection Fund from the information provided to me by the Cowichan Housing Association, so you have an idea of what it is. So the Rental Protection Fund is a $5 million fund that's been established, I believe, by the province to assist with nonprofit and cooperative housing developers and operators to preserve and affordable housing. The Cowichan Housing Association doesn't have experience as an operator or as a developer as of yet, but they're looking to move in that direction. And so they'd like access to this fund. And in having access to the fund, they are trying to put an application together that shows that they have good community support as a housing operator or a housing developer. And they also have involvement with a mentor partner, which is Macola Housing, and they have several properties that they're looking at right now to purchase. And so this rental protection fund would assist them in getting a mortgage to be able to buy properties and then to start into actually operating affordable housing in our community. And so the value of our letter of support is to show In addition to attaching things like the agreement that we have with the Cowichan Housing Association and our bylaw that shows it as a contribution service, and a little bit of the history around how this community, with elector assent, has established funding for housing with a housing trust fund and some operational dollars to support the Cowichan Housing Association. So that would be the nature of our involvement, is this letter of support and the documentation that goes along with describing our current relationship with the Cowichan Housing Association.
Director McGonigal.
I'll move it to get it on the floor and then comment, if I may.
Seconded by Director Staples. Director McGonigal.
Through you, if I may. I think this is another tool for the Cowichan Housing Association to piggyback on some of the other options that they have to accommodate those who are currently renting to stay within the rental market if there is some unforeseen financial implications of sickness or some sort of avenue that employment is stopped. Utility bills are another avenue that Cowichan Housing is assisting some members of the Cowichan Valley accommodate so they don't get their hydro cut off or telephone, etc. So this is another opportunity to help upwards of 75 rentals to accommodate a portion of their rent as affordable living conditions to continue residing in the rental accommodations that they currently have. It's not foreseen as looking at purchasing an apartment per se. I think one of the opportunities that Cowichan Housing Association is looking at is to morph into a housing authority, but that is in the infancy stage as they move forward. Don't take this as a director's report because as your appointee, I will forward you one, Mr. Robbins, but just a verbal update on yeah, you got that? It's on video. But just an opportunity to help those who may have struggles meeting their rental obligations.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, it's been moved and seconded. I'll call the question. This would be to provide the letter of support. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Mohan. Mr. Robbins.
Moving to bylaws, B1, CVRD bylaw number 4433, Building Regulation Bylaw 2023. Thanks, Mr. McDonald, for reminding us that you need to look at this one first. The recommendation is that CVRD bylaw number 4433, Building Regulation 2023 be granted first, second, and third readings.
Thank you. Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Deck. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And opposed? None opposed, motion carries.
And that CVRD bylaw number 4433, Building Regulation Bylaw 2023 be adopted.
Moved by Director Segal, seconded by Director Deck. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And opposed? None opposed, motion carries.
And now, CVRD bylaw number 4519. The first recommendation that CVRD bylaw number 4519, Ticket Information Authorization Amendment, Schedule Changes Bylaw 2023 be granted for second and third readings.
Moved by Director Segal, seconded by Director Martman. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And opposed? None opposed, motion carries.
And that CVRD bylaw number 4519, Ticket Information Authorization Amendment, Schedule Changes Bylaw 2023 be adopted.
Moved by, I was looking at my screen, but Director Acton. Seconded by Director Douglas. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries.
And moving to section 14, and this was a test for all the directors around the table. You get a bonus. These are bylaws for every director to vote on, not just electoral area directors.
Because they're service amendment bylaws.
Because they're service amendment bylaws.
All right, so I'm going to look for hot hands on the movers and seconders. Mr. Robbins.
DEA1 is the recommendation that CVRD bylaw number 4482, Mill Springs Sewer Service Amendment Boundary Extension Bylaw 2023 be granted first, second, and third readings.
Moved by Director Segal, second by Director Deck. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries.
BEA 2, recommendation that CVRD bylaw number 4492, Lambourne Estates Sewer System Service Amendment, that's Boundary Extension Bylaw 2023, be granted first, second, and third readings.
Moved by Director Abbott, seconded by Director Istash. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries.
And finally, BEA 3, the recommendation that CVRD bylaw number 4493, Lambourne Estates Water System Service Amendment, Boundary Extension Bylaw 2023 be granted first, second, and third readings.
Moved by Director Abbott, seconded by Director Martman. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. I like that flow, man. That's good. Over to you, Mr. Robbins.
We're moving through to question period. It was good.
Look at that.
I was testing. New business 1, which was a request for a letter of support. The correspondence was circulated to you earlier at the beginning of the meeting. This is with regards to a riparian restoration project in Lake Cowichan.
So I'll let folks read through it, but I'll turn to Director Morrison. I'm just going to be bold and endorse this letter of support before Director Morrison gets to tell us why.
Well, with that endorsement, do I need to tell you why? No, just really briefly, everyone. I received this email this morning. This is a long-standing program that I think there was a year off called the, I'm going to get this wrong, Cowichan Shoreline Stewardship Program. And this is where they go in and rehabilitate previously altered shoreline and establish biodiversity and function. And the author of the email, LOD, has indicated they're making a new application for funding. They hire students. They do great work. They're looking at some additional features such as some prevention measures, such as signage and the like, so that we don't have folks showing up with their backhoes on the long weekend and going in and destroying what's taken thousands of years of nature to establish, and also some monitoring after the fact, after these rehabilitation projects have been done. I think it's a great program. There's been a great deal of success, and they've got a December 1st deadline for letters of support. Normally, I wouldn't bring something with this short notice, but it's either today or it's not going to happen. So I'd appreciate your indulgence and support that the chair write a letter in support of this program. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Robbins, did you have a comment? No? Okay, thank you. And I just have to speak to some experience that I have with both the letter sender, who had a conversation with Director Morrison and the entire group. I've had the good fortune to be able to learn from these people over a couple of different occasions in the last few years with the Cowichan Watershed Board, and there are people no more qualified or passionate about this work, to the point where you can actually tell that this is kind of life's work stuff for them, and to have them working here in the Valley is an honor for us, and it's a really exciting opportunity for, especially considering some of the issues that we continue to discover around riparian areas in our watersheds. So I believe Mr. Director Morrison was moving the letter of support, which he did, seconded by Director Deck. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Mr. Robbins, I believe that takes us to question period.
Correct. Director McGonigal gets the gold star on that one. The question period is an opportunity to offer the public to ask a question regarding the business of the CVRD. The question period allows for an allotment of 15 minutes and is comprised of two parts. The first is reserved for questions directly related to agenda items. If there is time remaining, questions may be on a matter of public interest related to and in the CVRD jurisdiction. Each questioner is permitted to ask one question, plus one follow-up question related to the answer. The question must be truly a question, is not a statement of opinion or speech. Questioners must avoid personal references, insinuations, violent, offensive, or disrespectful remarks about another person, and unparliamentary language. We invite anybody in the boardroom here today to pose a question to you, Mr. Chair.
Welcome. Just turn on the microphone there, state your name and address, and let us know.
Oh, Rob Dawes, Duncan.
Hey, hello.
Ray Road. Just curious on the new building bylaw, which I guess is B1. It refers to step codes sort of, I think in one little section, so just wondering if under the new bylaw referring to the new building code, that's going to include the energy step level 4 and the zero carbon code that is
Of course, Mr. McDonald
coming
just left.
forward. Yeah, I was gonna-
I'm not sure where it is in the schedule.
There's something coming forward to you.
I think there's something coming forward. Usually I wouldn't confer with staff, but I know it's not that far. Yeah. The report is at the next EASC on that topic.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further questions for the board? I'm breaking all the rules today. No more questions. I believe that takes us a motion to go into close. Mr. Robbins.
Thank you. A motion to close to the public in accordance with Community Charter Part 4, Division 3, Section 90, and the subsections as noted in accordance with each agenda item.
Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Segal. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. We are closed. We will take a 7-minute recess, be back at 3:20 for closed session. Thank you, everyone.